a professor at King's College London. And you study war, David, insurgency, propaganda, cyber conflict, and fortifications. In other words, how disorder is bound to form and how states respond under pressure. When societies enter periods of prolonged stress, what most often turns instability into open conflict?
In a sense, I think what you're asking is, what is the cause of war? Which could be a very long answer, but I will give you a very short answer, which is that wars are caused when at least one side in a conflictual relationship thinks that they can win.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do you think there is a pattern in history after which we can determine where the threshold lies when wars erupt?
No, it isn't so simple. Okay. I would say that human history, human societies are far too complicated to establish laws or rules or thresholds in that way. We don't, as human beings, react like individual atoms or whatever. You can predict a phase change in a physical object in a way that you cannot predict a change in a society. It's just too complicated with too many variables. So, in short, there isn't really a threshold that you could put forward as really predictively substantial. Most human affairs, I would suggest, but especially war, are very, very highly contextual. You have to look at the specific situation and then apply judgment and logic and some intuition.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't this make it extremely difficult to avoid wars if there is not really a clear sign that, or a pattern or statistics which could tell you, all right, guys, now we're approaching a level of instability that probably will lead to war? Because if every situation is an individual one, and is it possible at all to think that our civilization will avoid wars that can really put an end to everything at our current technological state?
No. There are at least two questions in there.
Yeah,
one
sorry.
of which is a no, and one is a yes. So to be clear, no, we cannot write wars out. We cannot contrive a situation, in my opinion, in which war is not a possibility. Which is a statement that I make on the basis of a reading of human history, which tells us that from the very, very earliest points of human history, at the very earliest stages in which we began to coalesce into groups and to develop what now we might call a political entity, a tribe, a group, so on, that we had wars from the very beginning. There are 3,000, if you heard of the glacier mummy found in the Italian Alps, named Otzi.
Yes.
He was a soldier.
That I didn't know.
Well, Otzi was armed. He had an axe, a bow and arrow, and a dagger. He died violently. He was killed by an arrow in his back. So he had his own blood on him. He had defensive injury, or he had injuries on the palm of his hand, which wasn't a defensive injury. It's actually, the suspicion is that it was an injury caused when he stabbed someone and his hand would have slid along his own weapon. He also had the blood of someone else on his shoulders, which has led some people to think that maybe what happened was that he was part of a raiding party that went from one valley to another valley to attack some other people. He was in a group. One of his comrades was injured. He killed someone there. One of his comrades was injured, so he was carrying him on his back, possibly fleeing, when he was caught and killed himself. Otzi, if I'm not mistaken, is 1800 BC, something like that. A long, long time ago, well over 3,000 years ago. And so organized warfare goes very, very far back in human history. So I don't think, in answer to your first question, that we're going to contrive situations in which it isn't a possibility. So long as we remain human and so long as humans continue to govern themselves. That might change, quite obviously with the development of, it may be that we create thinking machines that have different views on war than us, but I think it's fair to say on a reasonable reading of human history that this is something that is very much rooted in our mentality. Your second question was about the possibility of wars which under current technological conditions could erase the human species. It would be quite hard to extinguish all life on the planet, but probably not that hard for us as a species now to extinguish ourselves. And that is a very real possibility. Europe is currently in a war which has the distinct potential to escalate to nuclear weapons use. The ongoing Iran war is one which is fundamentally about the nuclear potential of Iran, and which many people see a distinct possibility that this escalates again to a use of nuclear weapons. Strangely enough, throughout the Cold War, it was usually reckoned, slightly simplifying, but during the Cold War, it was usually thought that there was about 1% chance per year of a war occurring that would escalate to nuclear war. Most experts now think that the chances are actually higher, which is strange if you think in the post-Cold War era, but we now have many more nuclear actors, and the technology itself is less and less complicated. When it comes down to it, nuclear weapons is an 85-year-old technology. The recognition of the potential of fusion reaction is almost 100 years old. It was a realization of, now if I remember, I think he was a Hungarian scientist, but he was working in London, who first theorized the idea of a nuclear chain reaction. So, no, we're not getting rid of war, and the possibility still exists and maybe is greater now than it was before that we exterminate ourselves.
Do you know, after all the things you know and read and studied from history, do you know what is it in the human that makes us so warlike?
It's such a big question, honestly. It's like one of the really core questions. And I will say for myself, no, I don't. I don't know. But I could entertain you for hours and hours on different theories of this. To be simple about it, however, there was one big line of reasoning that just says that it's something to do with our biological nature, that we have in our DNA a set of programming that makes us essentially competitive creatures, right? We have this propensity to violence in us. It used to be thought that that propensity to violence was something that essentially emerged from social organization, right? So there was an idea that was prevalent for a long time, that in primitive societies that were free, for example, from the concerns of modern humans with capitalistic production, the acquisition of goods, the control of territories, on all of those things, that those societies were peaceful. Whereas our society, quite clearly, as I just said, is not a peaceful one. So the theory was that, or the belief was for a long time, in fact, that in the deep past, people in their state of nature, you'll recognize the idea, were peaceful. The problem is that more recent study has shown that prehistoric societies were actually colossally violent. That in the state of nature, human beings were also very warlike, and that in fact what's happened as a consequence of our social development, of our technological development, of our increasing development of political order, in fact the propensity to violence has diminished, but it hasn't completely gone away, and moreover, as our average propensity to violence has diminished, which is a good thing, our ability to create mayhem has increased. Yeah. So you may be less likely to slay someone in normal life. You may be like just generally more trustful, peaceful, and so on. But at the same time, that instinct hasn't entirely gone away, and political systems are in conflict, and we do find reasons to go to war. And when we do so, the means of violence available to us are obviously extraordinarily powerful, and we're extremely creative when it comes to killing each other. So there are many, many ways that we can do that, and we're all constantly dreaming up new ways of doing it. And I just think that that's going to continue.
Okay, Mr. David Betz, I need to wrap it up because our time is up, but I could indeed listen to you for hours and days in a row, for sure.
Okay.
So I need to enroll at King College then, or what do I need to do?
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
Okay. I might try. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.